So life is dark. Positivity and light are bullshit. And if you expect to be happy through being positive and being all about light instead of being about dark, do you know what I mean? Instead of realizing that life is dark, um, and being true to that by being a dark entity, you're going to be very disappointed and you're going to be suicidal. You're going to want to kill yourself because life just isn't um, being positive and, you know, being all about light instead of realizing that life is dark and just being true to that being a dark entity. It's not um, it's not authentic and it's fake and it's not real. And when you're inauthentic, unauthentic or inauthentic, I think it's inauthentic the word. Um, well, life isn't gonna let you be like that. Life is gonna punish you if you're trying to be like that because you're ignoring the truth that life is dark. So life will torture you. So ultimately, people who are all about being positive and all about light and stuff, um, they don't care and they don't care about themselves. And I can understand falling in the trap of thinking that you've got to be all about you got to be positive and all about light, um, because um, it sounds smart because it sounds like a good thing. I wouldn't say necessarily sounds smart. People believe that it sounds smart, like they fall for it just because it sounds good, and people associate good with being right, and they associate it with being smart. But this is a confused thought. Um, this is why when people talk about being dark, saying that life is dark, people will run away from that because they don't understand. People run away from things they don't understand. They fear what they don't understand. They think it's ignorant to be that way, to be dark. You know, it's like, I'll give you an example. If you want to kill yourself and you start talking about it, people are going to be, sometimes you'll hear stuff from people like, you shouldn't talk like that. And, um, why are you talking like that? You know, it's ignorant, it's negative. As if, like, if you want to kill yourself, not talking about it as if an intelligent solution. That's not an intelligent solution. If you want to kill yourself and you're keeping it to yourself, you're going to be suicidal. Like, you're actually going to want to kill yourself. You know, like, when you say you want to kill yourself, it's true in a sense, But at the same time, there's a difference between wanting to kill yourself and like desperately really wanting to kill yourself. You know, when you're um if you want to kill yourself but you keep it to yourself because you think, oh, I've got to be positive and I've got to put a smile on, and um I've got to be all about light and I can't be negative, and I've got to be positive and all this. Like, you're being fake, you're being inauthentic, and like I said a lot, you got to be real, you know. Um, People freak out about things they don't understand. Um, and that's ignorant, and you're actually going to suffer if you choose to not talk about the fact that you want to kill yourself to other people, you know. And this idea of, oh, I shouldn't talk about it because it's going to harm other people, you got to understand that you cause more harm to other people by keeping it to yourself, because you're going to suffer and people are going to pick up on that energy when you're, you know, around them, and when you're speaking. And even if you don't speak, like, they can still pick up on that energy anyway, and it's going to make them feel like shit. um it's healthy to talk about wanting to kill yourself if that's what you want to do, you know. And that's just one example of life is dark. And there are other ways life can be dark, in the sense of there are other negative, you know um thoughts that you can have, and um negative situations that you need to put yourself in. you know you need to put yourself in some negative situations. That's healthy. um that's why it's important to be real. There's one guy who's being real, and there's one guy who's trying to be smart. And the guy who's being real is actually doing the intelligent, is actually doing the smart move. You know, it's kind of like being picking the option that appears to be dumb, in a sense, is actually the smart move. If you start talking about the fact that you want to kill yourself, people might think you're dumb. I think they'll think you're ignorant. I don't think they'll necessarily think you're dumb, um, but they'll think maybe you're ignorant, maybe you're stupid. Um, this is just the way people react to negativity. People, like I say, there's lots of different reasons why people um, are so afraid of negativity. Um, you know, we're brought up to believe that we've got to be good people, and we associate being a good person as somebody who's, like, what when you think about, this idea of what is a perfect happy person, people tend to think it's somebody who's smiling, somebody who's positive all the time, someone like, Chris Martin from Coldplay. But I would say that someone like Kurt Cobain, who was more dark, his experience of life was probably better than, I don't want to say it's necessarily better than Chris Martin's, because like, Chris Martin is a healthy person. He is a healthy, happy person. But at the same time, you know, it's like it's kind of like there's a time and a place to listen to Coldplay, and there's a time and a place to listen to Nirvana. You can't really go wrong with Nirvana, to be honest. So, um, but you can go wrong with Coldplay because, like I say, if you want to kill yourself, mm, it's just the way you feel. You know, sometimes you want to listen to Nirvana, um, because you're in a negative headspace or you just feel negative. You know, denying yourself of the way you feel. Like in the sense, what I'm trying to say is, if you feel negative, if you want to scream, you've got to listen to Nirvana, or you've got to scream. You know what I mean? So that's it. All right, bye.